cover-ups, lies, and in between, conspiracies, and those who dare to speak the truth. Get ready for a walk on the wild side. Welcome to Parley with your host, Michael Gray.
Hi, all. This is Parley. I'm your host, Mike Gray, and we have another great show. We always have a good show because I always love all our guests and think they're fascinating. That's why I have them on. And today we have a really strange guest, Robert Damian Schneck, History of the Strange. Robert, you there?
I am here, Mike.
How are you, sir?
I am good, thank you.
Hey, are you in New Jersey or California?
I'm in New Jersey. Where did you think I was in California?
I don't know why. I don't know why I thought you were in California, but I suspected California. But then I thought, no, I think he's in New Jersey because I'm from New Jersey. I'm from Hoboken, New Jersey, originally.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah.
And now I live in Kissimmee, so Kissimmee.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But whereabouts in New Jersey are you from?
Well, I was spent most of my life in Paramus.
Ah, Paramus.
Yes, famous for its malls.
Yes, New Jersey.
Yes.
New Jersey is famous for its malls.
Well, I grew up between two of the biggest ones, so.
The Willowbrook Mall?
No. I'm between the Garden State Plaza and the Bergen Mall.
Right.
That's where I'm sitting right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm in New Jersey right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, let's what do you do? You're a documentarian on this strange events, or?
Well, what I do is I write history is essentially what I do, but
okay.
I concentrate on the odder aspects of American history, and I do this for a reason. First of all, I find it fascinating. I just plain find it interesting. But on top of that, I think that the strange, forgotten, ignored aspects of history actually reveal things about American history and culture that otherwise would be forgotten.
Right.
And it happens so consistently that I stay at it because you find some peculiar event, and it always leads you to something that you're startled because you never realized it about American history. I'll give you an example. In my last book, Mrs. Wakeman versus the Antichrist, I started to look into this story about a cult that was in the Midwest, and they were drinking human blood to improve their health. So it's not like they were attacking passersby. The group would meet, and they would, if one of them was feeling sick or weak, another one would volunteer their blood to let this person drink it. And they had biblical reasons for it, and there were also it was not such an unusual idea at the time. But what that led me to was discovering that there were people that used to visit slaughterhouses in the 19th century and the early 20th century. They would visit slaughterhouses and drink animal blood every day to improve their health, make them feel stronger, more vigorous. And this, while it was, I don't think it was ever common, it was certainly widespread. In fact, you can find newspaper clippings describing it from all over the United States, all the major cities and everywhere there were slaughterhouses. So you can spend your entire life studying American history and history books without ever learning this. It's just the sort of thing that gets forgotten and put away. And I find it fascinating. I mean, who would ever think such a thing?
Of
But
course,
it
because the elite don't want competition. They want all the blood.
well, actually, it's funny you should mention that, because one of the men who ran a slaughterhouse said that they did not charge anyone because they figured if it provided a benefit for people, he thought it should be available to everyone.
Right.
It's just, again, such an odd way of improving one's health, but it was consistent with a lot of beliefs of the time, and it's very ancient. I mean, you can go back to ancient Roman Greece, and you'll find things about improving your health through drinking human blood. In fact,
what's that African tribe in I want to say
Maasai? The
Maasai, yeah.
Right.
They'll nick one of their animals in the neck and drain some of their blood and then stitch it back up, and
they mix the blood with milk, and for them it actually is an important part of their diet. This is done entirely for health reasons. Among the ancient world, it was used to treat epilepsy. In fact, when a gladiator was mortally wounded in the Colosseum or wherever they were having gladiatorial games, people who had epilepsy would come down from the stands and actually put their mouths on the bleeding wound to take the blood into their mouth, because with that blood, they believed, came the strength and the vigor of the dying gladiator. So, and that idea held true for thousands of years. When Hans Christian Andersen was a young man, he saw a man beheaded, and the man's blood was caught in a cup and given to a sick young boy to drink. And that was in the 19th century. So the idea of it remained pretty much popular until well into what we would call modern times, certainly into the 20th century, the early 20th century.
Right, yeah. I mean, what about the diseases that can be caught, that are in someone's blood, like tuberculosis, hepatitis?
Well, a lot of the people who did this blood drinking suffered from tuberculosis, or at least what at the time was called consumption, which covers a lot of consumption was really anything that seemed to devour the person who was sick. But it was, now we mainly use it as a synonym for tuberculosis.
Right, yeah.
It's funny because one of the men at the slaughterhouse said that they inspected the animals for bovine tuberculosis, and that they didn't carry it. What effect it actually had, I can't imagine. Maybe it was just psychological. One of the things that surprised me about it was I wasn't aware that a human being could drink a hot glass of blood. I thought they would throw it up. But apparently they can. In fact, one of the reporters who visited a slaughterhouse to write a story about it tried a glass, and he said it reminded him of fresh milk. That is, milk right out of the cow, so it was still hot from the cow. And for some reason, they almost only took blood from cows. They didn't take blood from sheep or goats or chickens or anything like that. The people who drank blood for health reasons did it from cattle, probably because cows were just so big and strong and they wanted that vitality.
Right, yeah. Wow.
Again, it's one of those things that it just doesn't seem like something that would happen in the United States in the 20th century, but it did.
Well, did you hear that they were selling filet mignon, but it wasn't filet mignon, it was really the coagulated when they were slaughtering the animals, the beef, it was all the coagulated blood, and they were just packing it and selling it as filet mignon. Did you see that?
I never heard about that. I don't understand how that would work because if the blood was coagulated, I would think that it would liquefy when you cook it.
Right, yeah.
I don't know unless they were selling it as unless they were. I mean, if this was a restaurant, that wouldn't work. But maybe they were selling it to customers that way. I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry to get you off track there.
Oh,
that was recent.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I hadn't heard of it.
But no, I mean, in Europe, and there's a lot of places they sell blood sausage, or
well, blood as an ingredient in food is not that unusual. In China, for example, duck blood is an ingredient in tofu. You can get duck blood tofu. I've had it. I don't know why they add the blood. It tastes just like tofu to me. But it's just one aspect of history again that has been forgotten. And of course, you get people who consider themselves to be vampires and who actually do drink human blood. They will form relationships with donors who enjoy giving blood, and they consider the blood drinking to be very helpful for them, to give them strength, to make them attractive and active and feel younger. So the idea is not entirely gone. It's still alive, but it's now really only found in that small, tiny subculture of vampires.
Right, yeah. I mean, they make movies about this, and I kind of wonder, like, is this stuff real? Like, what was that movie a long time ago? The Hunger.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was with David Bowie and Susan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And that beautiful French actress whose name escapes me right now. But I'm only telling you what people who drink blood say. Every once in a while, you'll come across a science article where they'll say something along the lines of, there is evidence that giving young rats blood to older rats makes them feel, increases their vitality. You would find articles like that back in the 19th century too, where you'll get a doctor who is discussing this phenomenon of people drinking blood at the slaughterhouse, and most of them will say that there's just no benefit to it, while others will say, well, it's possible. So I don't know. Again,
well, did you see that article about Al Gore carries pig blood with him wherever he goes?
I did not see that. That would have stuck in my mind.
Yeah, no, Al Gore, he carries wherever he goes, he has like pig blood or something, and he drinks it. And the rumors did you ever hear the rumors that he's dead now? Dick Clark was a blood drinker. That's why he was so young.
Well,
in fact, Arsenio Hall called him out on. Remember the Arsenio Hall when he had his original show?
I do remember the show. Yeah,
he said that he goes, "Yeah, I heard a rumor that Dick Clark drinks blood."
Are you sure he wasn't just joking because he
no?
Oh, all right. Well, this is the first I've heard of that. Again, you have to remember something, Mike. I generally just look into history.
Right. Yeah.
I never heard that, but you know what's interesting about that though? This is kind of an interesting tie-in. The idea of someone like Al Gore or Dick Clark, you've got one of them is very important politically. His father was important politically. One of them was a TV star, movie star, comedian. So you get these two. Oh, I'm sorry, not Arsenio Hall. Dick Clark wasn't a comedian. He was important in the music business. So you've got these two people who you might call American royalty. Well, there's this long tradition of European belief where when children would disappear, the peasants would claim that a king or a nobleman was sick and was stealing them to drink their blood to maintain their health. And now, according to rumor, according to rumor, it's of course never been proved, King Louis XI of France, when he was sick, would drink children's blood to improve his health. And you can look back, there's an old Jewish folk tale about a pharaoh who suffered from leprosy and would bathe in the blood of Jewish children. And then there was the story that the Emperor Constantine of Rome, he also suffered from leprosy and was going to bathe in children's blood, but the crying of the mothers made him stop. And then when he converted to Christianity, that cured the leprosy spontaneously. And of course, there's the famous story of Elizabeth Bathory, the Hungarian noblewoman who supposedly bathed in her servant's blood to keep herself young. So there is this long history of the idea of people who are rich, powerful, famous, living off the blood of the poorer, the younger, and the healthier. It's one of the things that is just so astonishing to me about the kind of reading and writing and research I do are the consistencies. You'll find a belief still floating around that people believed 1,000 years ago, and it's just kind of a shock to discover it's still an active, living belief.
Well, have you ever seen, like Tom Cruise, right?
Mm-hmm.
That guy hasn't aged. In fact, they showed a side-by-side comparison of him, with the actors in the movie Top Gun. Was it Top Gun he was in?
Yes.
Anthony Edwards and all those actors, Meg Ryan,
mm-hmm.
where they showed a picture of him, with him then and now, and then the picture of the actors and actresses then and now, and it's like they've all aged.
Oh, well, maybe Scientology keeps you young.
Yeah.
I couldn't say. I look every year of 50.
Right. But I mean, what is he doing?
I don't know. I wouldn't be. Maybe it's some discreet plastic surgery.
Right. Who knows?
No, I couldn't say.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. That was just, that's just one example of the sort of thing that
I actually have to, I have to confess, I listened to just a few days ago, I re-listened to you were on the Opperman Report in November.
Mm-hmm.
So I listened to both those interviews, the main show and the after show. And what really fascinated me was the Bye-Bye Man.
Oh, yeah, the Bye-Bye Man. That is really not typical of my work. In fact, I came very close to leaving it out. Naturally, it turns out to be the most popular thing I've ever written. And that involved a friend of mine who, when he was in college, was living in Wisconsin with two friends of his. And they got a hold of a Ouija board. This story, incidentally, is not in my latest book. It's in my first book, The President's Vampire. Anyway, winter in Wisconsin is long and boring, and they were working in a group home. So when the residents went to sleep, they had all evening to themselves, and they began to do experiments with this Ouija board. Now, my friend is pretty serious about parapsychology. In fact, he used to be the librarian at the American Society for Psychical Research. And they used this Ouija board in a couple of different ways. First of all, it was my friend, his girlfriend, and a mutual male friend who were doing these Ouija board seances or experiments. And they were only able to get results if she, Catherine, was the one who was taking part. She and my friend Eli, his friend John, they were all doing this. Well, they began to get plenty of responses from the Ouija board, and they were getting responses from what claimed to be all different spirits. And one of the things that was so interesting about it was that different spirits would move the planchette, which is the little pointer device that you use when you're working with a Ouija board. Different spirits, or what called themselves spirits, would move the planchette in different ways, so you could tell which spirit was communicating just by the way the planchette was moving. Or, for example, some of the communications would come in, they'd be misspelled, they'd be consistently misspelled. Others would use contractions. It was interesting that they were getting such a variety. But what happened, and why this ended up in a book, was that they began to hear references from several of the different spirits that they were in contact with. That when I say spirits, I'm saying it with my fingers up in the air to do the quotation marks thing, just to remind you that we don't know what it was that was actually communicating, but they were getting responses. Anyway, They heard several references to this evil being, this, I don't want to say entity because that would imply that it was somehow not physical. Let's just say a very evil person, extraordinarily evil person. Well, my friend Eli, he hears that's like catnip. He's got to find out what they're talking about. So he asks his two friends to ask the spirits specifically about this evil person that they mention in passing but don't want to talk about. Like a lot of spirits in Ouija board communications, they would talk about the usual stuff, love and light and new agey kind of stuff.
Right.
But again, there were these references which my friend found fascinating. So eventually, when the spirits were pressed too hard, they would stop communicating until there was only one spirit left. And this spirit referred to itself as the spirit of the board. And it acted as a kind of interlocutor. That is to say, this was the spirit that was claimed to be in the board itself. And it's what allowed the people consulting the board to communicate with other spirits. That this was happening is actually not that unusual. Compare it to...
Wow, that's weird. So you're saying that the spirit said, or this thing was attached to the board itself?
That's what the spirit claimed,
Wow.
that it was attached to the board itself, and that anyone who used this board and would communicate with other spirits did it through this spirit. Now, that actually is not that unusual an idea. For example, when mediums, in traditional spiritualist mediums, would often claim to have what they called a control. Now, a control would be a spirit with which they had some kind of special connection. For example, the spirit of American Indians was very popular because American Indians were seen as able to navigate their way through wilderness. So the idea that a spirit would help you navigate through the other world was, it made sense that an American Indian would do something like that in the spirit world. In fact, some of those 19th century American Indian guides are still popular, like Silver Birch and Red Cloud. But this particular spirit that was in this board did not want to talk about this evil person, and but it did want to communicate. So eventually my friend Eli sort of strong-armed it and said that if it wants to communicate with them, it's got to tell them about this being that they didn't want to talk about. So eventually, in dribs and drabs, they got the story, which went something like this: that sometime in the 1920s, a blind albino child, a boy, was born down in Algiers, Mississippi. And this child's parents were unable to take care of him, so they dropped him off in a hospital orphanage kind of a thing. And as he got older, he kept running away, but since he was blind, he couldn't get very far, so they kept bringing him back. Finally, when he was in his adolescence, he murdered a nurse with a scissor, stabbed her many, many times, and escaped. And that was the last that was ever heard of him as a normal, if horrible, young man. Well, supposedly, bodies began to turn up by the sides of railroad tracks. Now, Algiers is, if I remember correctly, Algiers is a part of New Orleans. It's the part on the other side of the river. And New Orleans is a railroad hub. And apparently what happened was, according to the story, this blind boy began to ride the rails, and he began to murder people. He began to murder hobos, most likely, because those are the people most likely to be met on a train. And
well, was he really blind then? I mean, how the hell is he getting in on a?
Well, that's one of the things that's about the story that is so odd.
Yeah.
Well, it seems that he became involved in black magic or voodoo. Considering it's New Orleans, maybe it was voodoo. Because he was able to locate these victims, and it would seem, the inference is, that he would take out their eyes and their tongue, and he would carry the eyes and the tongue around with him in a bag. Now, the spirit of the board even gave a name for this bag. It was called the Bag of Gore. And what this person would do is he would sew together the tongues and the eyes, and he created this creature that somehow became animated. And he apparently was able to see through this creature's eyes. And this creature would help him locate new victims. Now, how did people... Well, let's say... how did he choose a victim might be the next question. You'd think it would just be a victim of choice, of opportunity, but that's not how it worked. Stories began to circulate about him, and the way it worked was anyone who thought about his name became a kind of a beacon, and as long as they thought about his name, he was able to hone in on them. So let's say his name was John, and I told you that as long as you think of the name John, John will be able to find you. Well, that's the way this worked. So as long as they thought of him, he was able to somehow focus in on them and come closer. He would start to ride the rails, coming closer and closer towards them. Now, the name he gave them was the Bye-Bye Man. And the name of the little creature that he sewed out of eyes and tongues was called Gloomsinger. And Gloomsinger would signal to the Bye-Bye Man that they were closing in on a victim by whistling. How a lump of animated tongues and eyes whistles, I don't know. But that's the way it worked. Well, when this whole story came out, Catherine, the girl who was really the important one in using the Ouija board, she was terrified. She did not like this sort of thing. She had had a few paranormal experiences, and she didn't like them, and that was it. She did not want to do this anymore. So the seances came to an end. Now, that was more or less it as far as the seances and the communications went. However, that was not it as far as their experiences with this being went. First of all, Catherine and John, even though they were living in different parts of the state, they both began to they started to wake up in the middle of the night. They were both having terrible nightmares. They were both sleeping very badly. Not my friend Eli, though. My friend Eli, he's one of those people where paranormal things just don't happen around him. His whole life he's been trying to see ghosts, have psychics do ESP. Nothing ever happens when he's in the room. There's actually a term for that in psychical research. There are certain people who inhibit it. But anyway, these two were having a very bad time of it. And eventually Eli went to go visit John, and John told him a story that had utterly horrified him. And that it was about, he heard the door knocking, and he was living in a boarding house at the time in Madison, Wisconsin. He heard his door knocking, and Catherine's voice said, "Hey, John, let's go get breakfast." So he slides out of bed, and he's half asleep, and he starts putting on his clothes, and he looks out the window, and he realizes it's pitch black outside. He looks at his clock, it's the middle of the night, and he realizes that whoever is knocking on his door and inviting him to come out to breakfast is not Catherine. And he just falls to the ground in horror. He is frozen in terror. And as he's lying there on this bedroom floor, he sees there's a light out in the hallway, and he sees the shadow of 2 feet underneath his bedroom door. And he laid there till morning. He was utterly paralyzed with fear. Eventually, the voice and the knocking stopped, and whatever it was went away. Now, Eli thought that was a great story, but Catherine...
Hey, hold on. We got to Robert,
Yeah.
Hold on right there.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, a real quick
Sure.
break. This is fascinating. You're listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York, CJ Mars Radio. I'm your host, Mike Gray. This is Parley. We'll be right back with our very special guest, Robert Damien Schneck, History of the Strange.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
Okay, we are back. This is Parley. I'm your host, Mike Gray, and we are back with our special guest, Robert Damien Schneck, History of the Strange. Hey, Robert, why don't you give your info, your Facebook, or do you have a website and your books?
Okay. Yeah.
Let's give you a plug there.
Oh, thank you. I've written a couple of books, but the ones that I think your listeners would enjoy. My first book was The President's Vampire: Strange but True Tales of the United States of America. Okay. And my most recent book is Mrs. Wakeman versus the Antichrist, which you can still get. It's in Barnes & Noble and places like that, of course, Amazon and all, and you can get it in Kindle. If you'd like to get in touch with me or are interested in the kind of updates are interested in this kind of odd historical material and Americana, I have a Facebook page called Historian of the Strange, which I try to have a daily update on any oddity that I'm working on or that I come across. In fact, today is the 1-year anniversary. Today is the first birthday of my Historian of the Strange Facebook. It's 1 year old today, and it's really been great because I'm able to get in contact with people who otherwise I never would have met. For example, there's a story I'm interested in writing about a panic that occurred in a place called Angoon, Alaska. And I never, ever in a million years thought I'd be able to get in contact with somebody. But one of the people on my Historian of the Strange page knows people in Angoon and is able to put me in contact with them. So, that sort of thing has just been terrific.
What happened in Angoon, Alaska?
Well, I don't really like to go into too much because I haven't written about it yet.
Oh, but, okay. That'll be a future thing.
That'll be
the next time you come on the show. We'll talk about that.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, because I write very slowly, and I write very slowly. Partly because I'm just slow, but on top of that, I like to check everything and make sure everything's right. One of the things that motivates me is that there is an enormous amount of bad writing about the paranormal. I'm fortunate in that I know a lot of people who do the good stuff. I'm friends with them. These are the people that put out the quality work. But there is so much out there that is so badly researched, so badly put together, that it's embarrassing to me. And that's why I try to make writing about ghosts and monsters and aliens, I want that to be as thoroughly written and as thoroughly researched as something on the Battle of Gettysburg.
Hey, what's your opinion on the Warrens? Did you know Lorraine Warren?
Well, she's still alive.
I thought she died.
No, I don't think so. No, Ed died.
Oh, Ed died. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Ed died a few years back. I don't know the Warrens. They are probably the most controversial people who do actual investigate. Or no, of course, it's just Lorraine now. So, but when they were investigating, they were always very controversial. So I really don't know what to say about them because I mentioned before my friend Eli, who we'll get back to. He once had some contact with the Warrens, and he said they were really very good people to talk to. He said they were open-minded, they were willing to discuss things. And then I'll hear from somebody else who said they were con men. They were just in it for the money. They were nuts. They were this. They were that. So I don't know. I've heard the exact opposite things about them.
All right.
I must admit they certainly seem to be colorful people. And as my friend Eli pointed out, he said that for the longest time, the Warrens were the only people that would show up if somebody was having a paranormal problem. And so he always has a certain amount of respect for them, for the simple fact that even if they had their own very particular view of how these things worked, they believed in demons, and they believed in this kind of it's kind of a super Roman Catholicism that they both practice. But even though my friend did not agree with that, he said they would show up and nobody else would. So, what's the point of having groups like the American Society for Psychical Research and the Parapsychology Foundation if they aren't going to help people? That was his reason for why he always had a certain amount of respect for the Warrens.
Right, yeah.
Again, though, and then I'll hear somebody else who said, well, the Warrens paid me to write stuff for them, and they just made stuff up. So, I don't know.
Okay.
And
I don't know what to think about them either. I mean, they seem okay to me.
Yeah, I just don't know. I know people certainly have strong opinions about them, though, I'll say that. Yeah. There's some people who absolutely love the Warrens. And that's fine. I have nothing against them.
They accumulated, all the artifacts in their shed.
Oh yeah. They have that
at their house.
They have that museum.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's Ed or Lorraine's nephew, but he started another one. He started another museum of artifacts connected to cases of demonic possession, ghosts, and things like that. I only have one artifact, and it's really kind of silly. I have a bathroom tile that a guy I know says a ghost threw across his bathroom.
From a tile?
A little bathroom tile. He said a ghost threw it across his bathroom. He said it was just thrown. It didn't pop out of the wall or anything. It was actually the floor tile, and somehow it went flying through the air and hit the wall. So he claimed to have a real problem with haunting in his apartment, but I don't do ghost investigations or things like that, but I certainly will accompany people who have done them. I've been on several ghost hunts, because I think it's an important aspect of modern paranormal life, if you like. And also, it's important for me as somebody who writes history to see how it is in life. This is how it is now. 50 years from now, people are going to be writing about the period of ghost hunting the same way we write about the period of seances and mediums. This is the way that ordinary people come into contact. This is the way that people come into contact with the dead, or what they think are the dead. Or
except
spirits.
Now, what's weird is you've got all these TV shows that'll last, all those. What's that one guy?
I don't know.
He's real muscular. I can't even think of his name.
I don't know. I've heard of Taps. I haven't watched the TV shows.
Yeah.
I don't know who you mean, but you see, there's this tendency for us to think that everything's new, but the fact of the matter is that we have ghost hunts and we have TV shows about ghost hunting and all that, but it's just another way that ordinary people are able to engage in the paranormal and to communicate with what are purportedly the dead, to engage with them. The same way that an earlier generation did so through mediums and seances. So, again, I have a feeling that in 50 years, this era is going to be looked upon as one of those fascinating times when people became very involved. Ordinary people, not specialists, not occultists, ordinary people became very involved in the paranormal. It's a very unusual period. I mean, the idea that someone who has a regular day job is going to spend their evening in the cemetery trying to get EVPs is that's an unusual situation. And again, it's something that they'll be writing about someday.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be in a cemetery at night, though.
Well, it's funny because we were talking when during the break we were talking about visiting cemeteries. I visited Ed Gein's grave at sunset in the middle of winter, and the sun was coming down, and I finally found his grave after wandering around the Plainfield Cemetery for an hour, and that was an experience, I tell you. But I guess that's for another show.
Anything happen?
I got spooked out, but apart from that, no, nothing. It wasn't.
As soon as you found this grave, the sun went down.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because I know the story, I know the history of what he did very well. And as I'm walking around, I'm thinking to myself, that grave right there, the one that is about 4 feet behind me, was the first one that he robbed.
Wow.
And that's just kind of an odd experience. But anyway, Ed Gein.
I mean, could you imagine digging down, what is it, 6 feet?
Yeah, it's about 6 feet.
Yeah. I mean.
Well, it's if I realize we're going off on a
and how could he not get caught? Was he did he work in a graveyard or?
No, he wasn't. Well, first of all, the Plainfield graveyard is very deserted. Oh. And he would rob the grave right after the burial. So the dirt was soft, and people have this idea that when a grave is robbed, that you have to dig up the whole thing. You don't. You just have to dig up a piece of it, knock a hole in the coffin, and then drag the body up through that hole. That's how grave robbers used to do it. They didn't dig up the whole coffin.
Ugh.
They would just dig a hole, like usually at the head, and they would put a pair of hooks underneath the arms and lift up the body that way. I read about grave robbing, too.
Jeez Louise.
And, of course, also that was back in the days before coffins were almost always put inside those concrete shells that are used to keep the soil above them from sinking. So it just wasn't that difficult. Fresh soil, middle of the night, not like anyone's going to be wandering around the cemetery, and that's how he got the bodies. Also, he claimed to have had help, but that's never been proven.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to what we were talking about. I'm sorry.
No.
It's so easy to go off on a tangent.
Right. The Bye-Bye Man? Where were we at on?
Right. Well, I just finished telling the story about John's experience.
Yeah, your friend. Yeah.
No, I never met John. But my friend Eli's friend was John. Eli's the guy I know. Anyway, Catherine, this unsettled her, to say the least. She was not comfortable with what was going on.
Yeah, because the damn thing was mimicking her, right?
Well, not just that. It just, she felt like it was coming for them. The way, of course, it was supposed to do. I mean, again, if you thought about the name, it would start to hone in on you. So, she and Eli went to go visit Wausau, Wisconsin, which is where Eli is from. And they were going to a concert that day. It was summer. And before the concert, they were just walking around Wausau. And there's a bridge there, a railroad bridge, that goes over this island in the river that is nicknamed Body Island. And it's nicknamed Body Island because lumberjacks that were drowned upriver, because there was a major lumber place upriver. The lumberjacks that drowned, their bodies would often end up on this little island in Wausau. So this railroad bridge goes over Body Island. It goes over the Wisconsin River to Body Island. So they were just hanging around. It's kind of a pretty area. And they were hanging around, and Eli thought he saw a turtle in the water, so he went down to look at it. And Catherine was up on the bridge. And she started to hear whistling. Now, it's a railroad bridge, so maybe you think it's train whistling, but no. She said it was a high-pitched whistle. And naturally, she started to think about Gloomsinger, because that's how Gloomsinger signaled. Now, she became terrified. She panicked. Now, Eli was there. He couldn't hear anything, but she did. she heard this persistent whistling, and she ran off that bridge with him chasing her because he didn't know what was happening. And finally, she explained what had happened. That was it. That was it for her and Eli. That was it for her in this story. She was done. And that was more or less how the story ends. But it kept going. It took on a bit of a life of its own. Now, Eli used to tell this story every Devil's Night. He never had Halloween parties. He would always have Devil's Night parties, which is, like a Halloween Eve.
The night before, right, yeah.
Right. I don't know. Apparently in Wisconsin they call it Devil Night. Here in New Jersey we used to call it Cabbage Night, because it was the night you'd throw rotten cabbage at people. So he used to tell this story every single Devil's Night. And it was the only story I have ever heard that spooked me. Now, I have had people tell me strange stories, as you can imagine. Writing the things I do, people tell me about the ghosts. People tell me about encounters with Bigfoot. People tell me about bizarre things they've had happen to them. But this story was the one that spooked me. And after I heard him tell it for 2 or 3 years, I said, we have to write this down. I'm writing this book. Let's include it. So I got him to write down the most accurate version of it that he could remember, because when he would tell it on Devil's Night, he would exaggerate a little bit for dramatic effect. But I got him to write down the most unvarnished version of it that he could think of. And that was the version that went into the book. Now, when I would tell this story, it got a lot of attention. In fact, I finally told it. Do you mind if I mention a very, very, very popular? No. Okay. I finally told it on Coast to Coast one night. And because I told it on Coast to Coast, that got a guy who's in the movie business. He heard it. And that's why the story has been optioned. And that's also why the story is being made into a movie. Wow. And it's being made into a movie by Intrepid Pictures, which is being distributed by the Harvey Weinstein Company. So it's a big deal.
I hope they don't mess it up.
Well, they can do what they want. They paid me for it, From my perspective, I'm hoping to sell a lot of books.
Sure.
Because I'm hoping that the movie comes out. Apparently, the movie is really being made. There are... You know how the movie business is, where 1 million movies get started, maybe one gets made. Apparently, this one is actually being made. So,
are they going to use you in the promotional stuff, like to go around and promote the book?
No,
or promote the movie as the writer?
No, they. Do you remember the movie Forrest Gump?
Right.
When Forrest Gump won an Oscar, all the people that won the Oscar, they all came up on stage. They thanked everybody from their mother to this one to that. No one ever mentioned the guy who wrote the book.
Winston Groom.
His name never came up.
Yeah, he was pissed about that, yeah.
Yeah, well, but I'm not pissed about that, because movies take on a life of their own. And the last thing these people want is a pissed off author going around saying, they changed my story. I personally don't care. To my mind, I'm going to sell a fair amount of books because of this. And I'm happy with that. And I would love for more mainstream readers to find my books, because I think they'll enjoy them. So I'm happy about it. If this thing actually does come out, I'm going to be the last one to complain. Besides, they said they fly me out for the premiere.
Oh, wow, nice.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It's funny. It was funny because I had to sign contracts. You can't believe a Hollywood contract until you've seen it. It was the one I signed was at least 40 pages long, and I'm exaggerating.
You realize you probably sacrificed your firstborn.
Oh, my firstborn, my bone marrow. my kidney if they need it. I read every word of that contract. Don't ask me how I did it, but I did it. I read it, and it was fascinating. I found the whole experience amazing. I mean, being on the phone in my little apartment, and I live a hermit's life, like a lot of writers do. I'm surrounded by books and papers and mess. And here I am on the phone with guys who are sitting around the pool discussing movie contracts. It's just a world I have nothing to do with. And so it's very exciting. Besides, I love horror movies. So
have you ever thought of writing movies or scripts or treatments?
No. I wouldn't even think about it. I wouldn't even consider it. The only one I've ever even considered writing was a prequel to the film Martin. Have you ever heard of Martin?
Martin. Why doesn't that sound familiar?
It's probably George Romero's best movie. It's his favorite movie. It's the one about this guy who might or might not be a vampire living in Pittsburgh.
No, I never heard of that.
Oh, it's a great movie.
Mm.
It's a great movie. I happen to be Facebook friends with the guy who was the star of the movie, and he's such a nice guy that we got to talking about it once, and he knows I'm a writer, and somehow it just came up. But even then, I just said, no, I'm just completely out of my depth. I know I do what I do, which is research and writing, and I just don't think I have it in me to go Hollywood, even if I wanted to.
John Amplas?
Amplas, Amplas.
I never heard of this movie.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's a great movie. It's... You watch it, you say it's a little rough around the edges because Romero shot it. It was one of those things where he would set up, shoot, and then run away before the police showed up because he didn't have a permit. It was that sort of movie. But it's a terrific movie. I think it's probably one of the best vampire movies ever made.
And they want to do a sequel, or he wants to do a sequel?
No. No one ever suggested that. I suggested writing a prequel to it. If you watch the movie, you see you can't do a sequel to it. When it ends, it's over. If you just, I don't want to give away the ending because you haven't seen it. But I thought a prequel would work. And I sort of sketched out some ideas, but I said, no, I just can't do it. I just don't know enough. I don't know how.
They'll probably remake it.
I don't even want to think about that. It would.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I would hate to see a remake of this. It would be slick, and it would lose what makes this movie so special. But again, that's something else. It was just something that I thought about. It actually came up while I was writing Mrs. Wakeman versus the Antichrist. And when you're writing a book and you're so deeply into it, any other project that comes along sounds good, just to get you away from it.
Yeah. It's on YouTube, by the way.
Yes, it is.
I think for free, yeah.
It's available on a lot of websites. It's an excellent movie.
Well, I'm definitely going to watch it.
Yeah, you should, and you might even consider interviewing John Amplas sometimes. He's a really interesting guy.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry. We kind of got off on the.
Yeah, that happens in life. We get off track all the time.
Why am I not plugging my books here?
Yeah, plug your books.
No, that's all right. That's all right. I'm just saying that it's so easy to get off track. But anyway, that's...
What about, have you ever done anything on the Jersey? I lived in Jersey for the first 13 years of my life. I never heard of the Jersey Devil till I moved to Florida.
That's because you lived in Hoboken, and you might as well live in New York.
Well, I lived in, and I also kind of grew up in Lake Parsippany.
Uh-huh.
So, my aunt lives there.
Oh.
Yeah, Lake Parsippany. You know that Lake Parsippany is an artificial lake?
I did not know that.
Yeah. It was, and there might be something under it.
Oh, is that right? Like an old town or something?
I don't know about an old town, but apparently that was dug out for the war, and there's like an ammunitions dump or something, like where they stored.
Yeah. I can understand that. That might very well be. Is that far from Fort Dix?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, it's just it would make sense because Fort Dix was very active during World War II.
Yeah.
But anyway, the I
We
it's
got
so
6 minutes left. What else did you want to touch on real quick?
oh gosh, I don't know. There's mainly I'd like people to come to the Historian of the Strange page, like it and follow it because I really enjoy being able to talk to the people who read my books and are interested in these things. So that's always a plus. And apart from that, I've got some more stories coming out. There's going to be one coming out in the Fortean Times, British magazine, that's available in the United States. The Fortean Times, there's a story coming out about a mystic in Detroit who was found with his head chopped off back in the 1920s and his family murdered. And I tell that story. And I do a piece, in the story includes a book he wrote called The Oldest History of the World Discovered Through Spiritual Science, or Psychic Science, which is the most bizarre book I have ever read. 200 pages of bizarreness. His own version of creation, his own version of the Bible. So that's going to be coming out, and I'm working on a story right now about a suicide club.
Really? A suicide club?
Mm-hmm. It was one that was active in Bridgeport, Connecticut in the late 19th, early 20th century.
Mm.
So that's kind of what I'm doing, and I've got a bunch of stories lined up. I spend a lot of my time just getting stories lined up because you have to have 5 or 6 in the works to get one that works. It's like the fish who has to lay 1,000 eggs to get 5 that grow to adulthood.
Right, yeah.
Because all the others.
Well, what do you think about what Hollywood? I mean, the movies that they're producing now,
Mm-hmm.
they're just total crap.
I must admit, I'm not crazy about a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go back and watch The Godfather and a lot of older movies that I'm still discovering because Hollywood is just putting out garbage now.
Well, I suspect that the Bye Bye Man will be brilliant.
I would hope so.
It would be brilliant, possibly the greatest movie ever made. But I'm a compulsive horror movie watcher. I can easily watch 1 or 2 a day while I'm working. I just always have a horror movie on. So I have seen movies that are so bad your eyes would melt. At the same time, you watch them, you go through all the garbage because every once in a while there'll be one and you'll watch it, you say, wow, this guy's good. He doesn't have a lot of money, but you can tell he's good. He's got a story to tell.
I think the biggest problem, this is my opinion, what do I know? But what they do is now these movies, even though they're 15, 20 minutes, they'll show the movie, the rough cut to an audience, and then ask the audience what they thought. And then they cherry pick. They're like, okay, the audience, we want to see this, this, and this. And then they'll form the movie around the audience's opinion.
You mean focus groups?
Yeah, focus groups. And it's like, that's insane. I mean, I get the fact that they want to make a movie that's appealing to everybody. But when you start making a movie that's appealing to everybody, then it's bland.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm kind of a fan of very low-budget movies, so focus groups don't come into that.
Yeah.
And also, I think that a fair number of those Hollywood movies, I can't believe they spend too much time on focus groups, at least the ones I watch. Again, I only watch horror movies. I haven't watched a regular movie in ages. Oh, except for 1 or 2, but, very rarely, usually because a friend wants to watch it. But I don't think that the movies I watch, which are, a zombie movie made in Kentucky by 3 teenagers with a handheld camera, they don't get focus grouped.
Right.
But the funny thing again to me is that you watch it, you say, wow, this kid's going to be good. Give him a chance, give him a few dollars. And with any luck, he won't.
I'm gonna be looking out for that Bye Bye Man. That's for sure.
Yeah, you can actually, if you Google Bye Bye Man, you'll find all the information about the movie. And again, it's so exciting to me. I just never expected anything like that to happen.
Did you make some good coin from it?
Not bad, not bad.
Okay, good.
Certainly more than I've ever earned from anything else ever. You don't make it in the books, I'll say that.
Right. Well, let's wrap this up. We got 1 minute. Let's give your 2 books again. Your books,
Okay.
Your website or your Facebook page.
My Facebook page. My books are The President's Vampire, Strange but True Tales of the United States of America, Mrs. Wakeman versus the Antichrist, which is still in Barnes & Noble, and I guess other bookstores. I don't know of any other that are left but Barnes & Noble anymore, though. And my Facebook page is Historian of the Strange. So if you want to visit that, come visit.
Okay, and we're going to definitely have you back on.
Oh,
That's for sure, if you're willing to come back on. Hey, I just want to say something. To the audience, and I'm not sure if you know. Dave McGowan. Dave McGowan needs our prayers. He's got 4th stage cancer, and he's in LA. If you go to Dave's website, we'll put out more information. But anyway, Dave, if you guys can pray, whoever out there can pray for Dave McGowan. He's battling cancer. I just wanted to say that, and I should have been more prepared. And I want to probably make a statement. I'm gonna issue a statement because he's a real good guy. And but anyway, I want to thank Robert Damien Schneck. Robert, you there?
I'm here. My pleasure, Mike. Anytime.
I want to thank our guest. Please stay tuned on CJ Mars. This is Parley, and I'm Mike Gray, your host.